convince me. We are back for week 15 of the NFL. This is the top of the Power Hour, the only NFL pregame show with all the stuff you care about, none of the fluff you don't. I am Chad Millman. Over the next 30 minutes, my Action Network buddies, Sean Koerner, Simon Hunter, Chris Raybon, are going to convince me all the props, all the sides, all the totals I should make for today's NFL slate. Plus, we got Evan Abrams with market reports and trends that make you sound smarter than your friends. We'll also welcome in Dr. Nick Giffen. He's going to take us through the latest need to know from our luck rankings at the bottom half of the hour. Gilles, Gallant, and Brian Matthews will preview the best touchdown props on the board today on the Touchdown Show. Don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the Action Network YouTube page. All the picks we discussed today tracked in the award-winning Action Network app. Download it today. Big moves on the leaderboards. Let's take a look. After 14 weeks, Sean Koerner making a massive, massive comeback. Tackle props, clicking. Totals, clicking. Raybon, still having a great year. A lot to think about as we get into the player props. Sean Koerner, kick us off.
So I got a fun one for you, Chad. I'm
They're
going
all
straight.
fun when they come from you, Koerner.
Yeah, yeah, I try. But I'm going to this game of the year potential Super Bowl preview between the Bills and Lions. So I had to find a fun one from this game. And I'm going with Keon Coleman of the Bills. His longest reception to be over 17 and a half yards. Um, he's expected to return after missing the last 4 games with an wrist injury. Sounds like he could have returned last week. They were just being extra cautious. So he's pretty much 100% at this point. And he should return to his role, which has been pretty similar to the old Gabe Davis role, where he's seen a team high 22% of his targets downfield. And he's also been pretty good after the catch, which is why he's actually cleared this number in 7 of 9 games this year. And this is actually one of the best matchups he's seen all season to clear this number. The Lions have used man coverage at the highest rate. They've used press coverage at the second highest rate. Coleman has really thrived against both those. His 2.8 yards per route against man coverage ranks 14th among all wide receivers this season. And he's averaging 28 yards a game against press coverage. Only Nico Collins and Jamar Chase have averaged more than that this year. So this is just a fantastic spot. Plus, the Bills, will likely have to throw more than most games this year. They're 2.5 point underdogs. So they're going to be more pass heavy and aggressive than usual. So this is just a market and a matchup that sets up perfectly for him. I would set this, closer to 22 and a half, 23 and a half, and still kind of lean towards the over. So I think he's a good bet to clear this. Again, he's cleared this 7 of 9 games this year, and this is probably the best spot to do it.
All right, going big in the biggest game of the year, Sean Koerner. Simon, you've been crushing player props this year. What do you got?
Going with Trey McBride over 61.5 receiving yards. And this is really about this matchup against this Patriots team that, honestly, they're one of the better teams covering the outside, but they're terrible covering the middle of the field. They've struggled all season, and that could be attributed to the fact that they have Christian Gonzalez, right? That could help you be one of the better teams on the outside. And I view that as a big deal in this game where we've seen that teams, they know that he is a shutdown corner, that they can attack the middle of the field. So there's no need to force the ball outside. I think Kyler will take advantage of that, especially with a guy like McBride who, coming out of the gate, Chad, he was really bad to start this season. I think that's why his totals have been so low. So the fact that this is still 61, even though he's gone over 70 receiving yards in 4 straight games, just feels like a really nice spot to me. Like, we've seen him and Kyler get into a rhythm here down the stretch, and the fact that this number is still so low, I feel like there's a lot of value here. So looking at this matchup, it really is about how can this Cardinal team attack this Patriots team. We've already seen it time and time again. Tight ends do well against this Patriots team, especially no-name tight ends have done well. Now, McBride, I know people don't believe this, but he has been a top 5 tight end this season. He just has not scored, but he's been great at receiving and getting open. I mean, he leads the team in targets as well. So looking at this matchup, I really like McBride, especially in the matchup against the linebackers of this Patriots team. So give me McBride over 61.5.
Yeah, look, McBride last week, barely any touches in the first half, and then went over his receiving total, went over 70 yards in the second half. So you're looking at a good low number there. Raybon, talk to me.
All right, I'm going with Javonte Williams under 31.5 rushing yards. Last 4 games, he's topped 1 rushing yard only once. That was in week 11. He had 9 for 59. But the other 3 games, he was at 1 rushing yard or fewer. He just had some ridiculous stat lines. They're kind of using him as the short yardage back and the passing down back now. And they're not really even letting him get the hot hand, which was kind of what we expected a little earlier in the year. Last 4 games, just 4.5 carries per game, 14.8 rushing yards. And Denver is actually 8th in pass rate over expected. So a lot of people think, Bo Nix, rookie quarterback, they just hand the ball off a lot. No, they actually pass a lot more than you expect. And they've been doing it all year. So now Denver's giving 5 different players carries every game. You got McLaughlin, who's Sean Payton said he can handle even more. He was already the starter who overtook Williams. You got Estime, who averages 3.5 yards after contact. Williams is 3.6 total. So he's always a threat still to get even more from Williams. And then you got Marvin Mims playing about 4 or 5 snaps a game at running back these days. And Burton, the fullback, getting the short yardage carries every game. So there's just a lot of ways that Javonte Williams could go under. A lot of guys touching the ball, a lot of explosiveness for the Denver pass game as well, which hurts the running back yardage total. So he's been under in 7 of 13, 3 of the last 4. I expect it to happen again. Javonte Williams under 31.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, a lot of downward trends for Williams. He does not look right at all in this offense the entire year. And you've seen the increasing number of carries, especially Estime, who feels like he's on your screen more and more if you're watching those Broncos games. I like Williams. I like Keon Coleman. I love Trey McBride against the Patriots with a still relatively low number. Give me Trey McBride over 61.5 total receiving yards. Let's get into some spreads. Koerner, take it away.
All right, let's maybe go with the grossest play on the board today. Titans +6 is now up to +6. But the Titans are a team I can't imagine too many people want to be betting right now. And 80 to 90% of the bets have been on the Bengals here. So again, not shocked this number has gone up to 6. But the Titans, they've had a brutal schedule since week 7. They played the Bills, Lions, Chargers, Texans, Vikings. And they're a bad team, but I think this is the lowest point in the market for them, especially after losing to the Jaguars last week. But obviously the Bengals have the way better offense in this game. The market's already factoring that in, but the Titans have the better defense in this game. They've been pretty solid. They ranked 12th in DVOA, where the Bengals ranked 29th. And the Titans have been getting some key players back on defense. Chidobe Awuzie returned last week. That's huge going up against the Bengals here, so that improves their secondary. Plus, we might see some, rain wind in this game, which would make it a bit more run heavy, lower scoring environment, which would only help the Titans in this case. But when it comes to the Bengals defense, that's been their weakness all season. And last week was the first time they played without linebacker Logan Wilson, who is behind Trey Hendrickson, their most important defensive player, in my opinion. He's on IR, and their run defense just collapsed. So the Cowboys were able to run all over them. Rico Dowdle had a career day. I think that sets up perfectly for the Titans with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. So I think they're able to keep this close, running the ball, leaning on their defense. So give me the Titans +6 here.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the only pregame show, a little foreshadowing here, where you might get more of a breakdown of the Tennessee Titans and the Cincinnati Bengals than you're going to get of the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions, because that's where the opportunity may be. I saw that number pop to 6 this morning. I've been eyeing this game all week. I had been waiting to pull the trigger until we got into Sunday morning. I saw the +6, liked it a lot. Simon, Koerner said he was going to make the most disgusting pick, but I feel like you want to make a run for the title.
Yeah, at least his game's watchable. I don't know if this one's watchable, Chad. This is the type of game you bet it and you forget it. You just cash the ticket right at the end of the day. Give me the Jaguars +3.5. And honestly, I was going to put that Lions-Bills game in here. When I saw Sean's pick, I was like, let's just get gross this week, because I do love this game. I love this Jaguar matchup, and it really is all about how they performed as a dog this season, and just Doug Peterson in general. He's been great in the position of a dog. We talk all the time. We like to fade Doug when he's a favorite, but as a dog, that's when you back him. Peterson 7-2 this season as an underdog, and he's been doing it with Mac Jones. Like we've seen since their bye week, every week they're a 3.5-point dog, and they've been covering, 2 straight games. They won outright last week, but still, the public does not trust them, Chad. It's another week of the public and professionals coming in heavy on this Jets side, and we've seen this number move from 3 to 3.5. And to me, the value's too much to pass on. I have this game at -1 Jets. The fact that I'm getting 3.5 points now on this Jaguars team, you've experienced it last week, Chad. You're never out of it when you're playing against the Jets. You could be down in the fourth quarter with a 5.5-point favorite, and somehow the game will go to overtime and you will win and cover your bet. So this Jets team, they're just so dysfunctional. Aaron Rodgers, that was his best game of the season last week, and they still lost outright. So looking at this matchup, I just love the way the Jaguars defense is playing. Love how the offense is playing as well, in the sense that they don't give up. Even when they're getting dominated and they're shut out in 3 quarters, they still find a way in the fourth quarter. So this is going to be a fun bet that's never going to be dead. We're always going to be in it. Even if somehow the Jets are up 14 points in the fourth quarter, Chad, I still have faith of Mac Jones getting us in that back door. He's done it multiple times now. So, give me the Jaguars plus 3.5 with the hook.
I think it's more like we also have faith that the New York Jets are going to leave that back door wide freaking open, because they are truly incompetent. Like the fact that the Jets last week was the first time since week 6 that they were underdogs, still didn't cover, and now they're back to being favorites again, this time road favorites. I mean, come on. Doesn't make any sense. You can see in the app, everyone can see in the app. Took a little taste of the Titans. I've taken a little taste of the Jaguars. Raybon, convince me of something that would make me want to take an even bigger bite.
All right, let's go with your favorite, Chad, the Pittsburgh Steelers as an underdog on the road in a game that is in the state, so not as much home field for the Eagles. And everyone's kind of scared off, I think, because George Pickens is out. So no one is going to put any faith in the Steelers, even though we know how the Steelers win games. We know how they stay close. It's their defense. That's why you have these Mike Tomlin spots in the first place. But Pittsburgh, the reason I think they match up here is they're top 5 in run defense, early down success rate, adjusted line yards, second level yards, big against Barkley. If you can just get some, stops before third down, just not let them get, 15, 20 yards every time, you're going to get to some third downs. And Pittsburgh's second in pressure rate with Highsmith on the field. Now, Jalen Hurts has been giving up a ton of pressure, even with Mayata back at left tackle. And when he's pressured, he completes just 46% of his passes for 5.1 yards in attempt. So I think the Eagles offense is still going to struggle in this game. And then you look at their defense, which I loved. I've been loving their defense all year. I thought it would take some time, and it's arrived, but you still have a Carolina team that punted just twice last game. Like the first 2 drives, that was it. They should have won that game. Bryce Young drove them up and down the field. So I think this Russell Wilson offense, they're great at, they still have the screen game, and the Eagles have struggled with some screens at times. So I still think this Pittsburgh team is going to find a way to stay close here. And you could have some turnover luck go against Philly for the first time in a while, because they don't really turn the ball over because they're not throwing in the second half. But Pittsburgh, they can stop the run. That's what would make Jalen Hurts throw a little bit more. So I love this spot for the Steelers, catching 5.5. Mike Tomlin as a dog, 62, 31, and 3 against the spread, 67% against the number, 5-0 this season. And Chad, I know that Pittsburgh is a public side. Look in the action app. I think it's like something like 60, 70% of the tickets on Pittsburgh. So I looked it up. Mike Tomlin, when he's a dog and the public is all over him, 63% against the spread for his career. And even better in this case when he has the bets and the money on his side. So no drop off for Tomlin here.
Well, look, I didn't even need you to tell me that for me to love the Steelers in this spot. I'm on the Steelers in this spot. I've been on the Steelers in this spot all week. Simon and I were in Philly this week for a favorites event. And obviously there were a ton of Eagles fans there. The Eagles fans are beside themselves with this team right now. They obviously love that they're on the winning streak, but the contretemps between AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts, and the one thing that fans kept saying to me was at a press conference this week, Jalen Hurts basically defending himself by saying, look, I'm a one-read quarterback and then I go. I don't think that's how you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. So yeah, we're going to be on the Steelers here at +5.5. Mike Tomlin, just about any way you try to gauge his career as an underdog, 60+% against the spread. I'm glad you mentioned the public, Raybon. We all love to fade the public, but maybe not when it comes to the Steelers. Let's take a look at where the majority of the betting tickets are according to the Action app. For those who are new, the number of tickets generally represents who the public likes. The money percentages, also available in the app, indicate who the professionals like. Look at Lou. We talked about the Bills and the Lions. 76% of the money coming in on Buffalo Bills. 78% of the bets on the Pittsburgh Steelers. 92% of the money coming in on Cincinnati against the Tennessee Titans. It's time to bring in Director of Research, Evan Abrams. Make us all smarter, hopefully feel better about the bets we're making today. Evan, please, please, please do that.
Well, listen, it is a mid-December slate, so I think we have to start with weather this time of year. So since 2021, games with 10+ mile an hour winds, 62% to the under for an over 18% return on your investment. Now, the one that just highlights the entire board right now is Kansas City and Cleveland. About 16 mile an hour winds, plus you're going to get rain. That total has dropped from 46.5 to 41.5. Now, it's important. That 62% I told you, that 18% ROI, that is on the closing number. So anything you get above that number, congratulations, you've done your job. So there's 3 more games that kind of fit within that parameter. Houston and Miami right now at 11 mile an hour winds, 49.5 to 46. And then the 2 to watch out for, and just go to actionnetwork.com. You can check out the weather there, and our Action Labs proprietary systems just have all the wind listed. But it is Tennessee and Cincinnati is on the bubble, and actually Jacksonville and the Jets kind of just moved out, tapered off for a bit. It's about 8 or 9 miles an hour. So speaking of that Tennessee and Cincinnati game, the Titans this year are 2-11 against the spread. If they don't cover today, they would be just the 4th team to start 2-12 ATS in the Super Bowl era. Tennessee is actually chasing the Ravens in 2007 for the 3-13 ATS worst mark we have seen a team finish. So we'll see how Tennessee does today. That line is up to 6, and I know we just talked about spread, so we kind of like Tennessee in that one. So if you go back to Thursday Night Football, the 49ers lost their 6th game of the year as favorites. Right now, the Jets also have 6 losses straight up as favorites this year. Only one team has lost 7+ games as a favorite in a single season over the last decade. That would be the 2019 Cowboys. Now, ironically enough, with this Jaguars-Jets game, of course, Mac Jones starting for Jacksonville. Mac Jones in his career, 18-27 against the spread, but against the Jets, 5-0 straight up and against the spread. He has dominated them, obviously, all with the Patriots. So we'll see what happens today. And I leave you with this. The over-under in Buffalo and Detroit right now is 54.5. It was up to 55, which would be the highest total in any NFL game since December of 2022. Now, it's interesting enough that last decade, we've only seen 2 games where both teams averaging 30+ points per game with a total of 50+ and an indoor track, which obviously leads to more offense. That was both in 2018-19. It was the Saints and the Rams, and obviously Jared Goff in both of those games like he is today. And interesting enough, since 2019, totals of 55+ are just 23-10 to the under, going under by 3.2 points per game. So maybe a little inflated, but hopefully it's the game of the year, because I see everybody kind of betting all different types of sides and can't wait for that one, Chad.
Everybody is all over this game with a whole boatload of opinions. It's like all anyone cares about in the betting community is this game and the Tennessee-Cincinnati game. Clearly, that's the most important game on the board. All right, Evan, thank you very much. Do you want access to all of our experts' picks as soon as they happen? What about our prop projections powered by Sean Koerner and Chris Raybon? You get all that plus real-time bet and money percentages with Action Pro. Use code POWER20 and get $20 off the annual rate. POWER20 for $20 off. Let's talk about some totals. We talked a lot about totals. A lot of weather. Koerner, Are you going to give us some kind of weather related total or no?
Maybe we'll see. I don't know. But I am going to go with this barn burner of a game between the Cowboys and Panthers to go under 43. This is a matchup between two teams that have both trailed at a top 7 rate this year. And I found that when teams like this meet up, it tends to lead to both teams being a bit more run heavy, more conservative, lower scoring environment overall. So I like that here. And, the Panthers are a rare favorite here. Bryce Young has been playing well, but this is a spot where they're going to be able to lean on Chuba Hubbard even more and shorten this game. So this is essentially going to be Chuba Hubbard versus Rico Dowdle. Both should have big games. Love them in fantasy, but that doesn't scream a total that should be in the mid 40s here. Plus, I think the Panthers defense might be able to slow down the Cowboys offense here. They've used cover 3 at the 3rd highest rate in the league. And that's the coverage that Cooper Rush has really struggled this year. He's averaging just 3.5 yards per attempt, which is a league low against cover 3. Actually, all 7 of his touchdowns this year have come against man coverage. He's yet to throw one against zone. Plus, the Panthers' run defense has been much, much better on inside runs, and that's where Rico Dowdle loves to run. He's run inside at the 3rd highest rate in the league. So I like how the Panthers defense, matches up against the Cowboys here as well. And as you hinted, this is a game we could see some rain. I'm not really factoring that in, but it can't hurt here. They're going to be run heavy anyway, but could induce these teams to being a little bit more run heavy, more conservative. So, but last but not least, this is a game where Bill Vinovich is going to be the ref here. He's been the best ref by far for the under the last 5 seasons. The under has gone 46-28, so a 62% hit rate on the under. They didn't want him to go muck up the Bills Lions game, so they sent him out to Carolina for this game. I think there's a reason for that. So give me the under 43 here.
Koerner, how do you do this to me? How do you get me on a game like the Cowboys and the Panthers where we love the Panthers? Panthers are like Action Network's favorite team, and they're finally playing like the team we expected them to be all season long. And then I'm ready to go weigh in on a different total, and you pull out the Bill Vinovich stats.
Yep.
That's my weak spot. You're just playing in my vulnerabilities. Simon, what do you got?
Chad, this line's moving. Denver Colts under 44. It looks like it's down to 43.5, which is unfortunate, but still love it. It's still above a key number, and to me, this is still a number that's way too high. I have this game at 42, so obviously there's still a lot of value here at 1.5 on this number, and it's really all about this matchup between these two offenses that, they're young quarterbacks. We've seen time and time again, young quarterbacks coming off bye weeks tends to be bad for them, right? They kind of get it thrown out of their rhythm that they've been in all season. And we've had the numbers that back that up. When both teams are coming off a bye week, Chad, the under is hitting 7 straight games, 12 out of the last 14. So it's a nice spot. Like, it's a unique spot too, where it's not every week that we get 2 teams coming off a bye week matched up, right? The schedule makers rarely give us this type of spot. So I love this number. We've seen now Denver's defense as well. They're really great at putting pressure on quarterbacks. And Anthony Richardson, he wants to run first, which again is good for us. The less he throws, the better it is for us when we pick an under, because the clock will keep moving and he won't be pushing the ball downfield, which is exactly what Anthony Richardson wants to do. So looking at this matchup on paper, I can see both offenses struggling and both defenses kind of showing up here and this kind of being a battle. And I mean, you talk about, we like the Colts at this spot just because the number and low totals like this, it's such a key thing to that, right? It's when you take the dog and an under like this, every point's going to matter. I just look at this like this is going to be a game that's going to be really low scoring, a lot of field goals, just an ugly, long, slow game. So, both teams have running quarterbacks. I think it also benefits towards the under. So give me the under 43.5, Chad.
Yeah, Billy Ward of the analytics department here, working with Dr. Nick and Koerner, has a great negative correlation parlay for this game. Anthony Richardson over his rush yards and under his rush attempts. I like that one too. Raybon, what's your under, or what's your total?
What's my under? Yeah, right. You know me, Chad.
Yeah, exactly.
I am going with the Bengals Titans under 46.5. First of all, this is a luck under, so it's a luck under by minus 8.1, which means these teams have combined to score 8.1 points more than expected here in this matchup overall. So you look at Cincinnati, and I talked about this last week for the Monday night game, but they had these 5 shootouts in a row where their games averaged over 66 points per game. in weeks 8 through 13. And I just don't think their totals have recovered yet. They're just kind of, floating in these mid to upper 40s, even though if you look at games like they're going to face Tennessee, like opponents like that, New England, 16-10, Giants, 17-7, Browns, 21-14. And that Dallas game, 27-20 was the highest game. Probably should have been 23-20, but Cowboys be Cowboys. And so Tennessee, this Titan team, they handed off last week on the first 8 plays of the game, 9 of the first 10 plays on their opening drive. And they elevated a 5th tight end to the roster last week. And then they did that. They elevated it again. So they're going to have 5 active tight ends for the second straight week. They've been eliminated for a couple of weeks now. And I think they're just trying to get their run game going. You heard Sean mention that is where Cincinnati struggles more against, good quarterbacks who aren't, against bad quarterbacks, I should say, not good. Against bad quarterbacks, Cincinnati giving up 162 yards per game. All of their, explosiveness given up in pass defense came against Lamar Jackson and all those guys where they were having the shootout. So you look at this spot, and even with the under on Monday Night Football, the last 5 Cincy games over the total by 16.5 points on average. The under in that situation, when the road team enters with a 5-game average of even 13 points over on average, 52, 32, and 2, 62% against the spread. So give me the luck under Cincy, Tennessee, 46.5.
Yeah, you had me at luck number. Like, this is a massive luck rankings total for the week. It's like one of the bigger luck ranking unders we've seen. And I like the spot. You were right on with Cincinnati and the Cowboys under last week. That's what you had written about at actionnetwork.com, liking the under on Monday Night Football. I'm surprised Koerner didn't steal this one, given that, he is one of the masterminds of the luck rankings. But yeah, give me Cincinnati and Tennessee and give me the under. We've talked about the luck rankings. It is my favorite stat in the Action Network universe. We're taking all the noise out of the randomness, give us a more accurate picture of a team's performance. For those who want to know more, check them out in the Action app or actionnetwork.com. Some luck numbers we've been talking about. Massive luck game favoring the Browns, going against the Chiefs today. Also, as you might expect, the Giants are the luck ranking team against Baltimore. Today, we talked about Cincinnati and Tennessee as the total. New England, Arizona, another luck total. Dr. Nick, what else is in the luck rankings for our viewers today?
Yeah, well, let's go to that Arizona-New England game. And you mentioned the luck total there. It is a luck over. Luck overs are much more rare than luck unders because totals tend to get bet up, right? So our thresholds they get met a little less with luck overs. But instead of playing the over, which I tracked in the Action app on Monday, we got some closing line value on the over there. Let's now pivot to some touchdown bets, because if we're going to go over, we need touchdowns, right? So we're going to take Arizona's 2 top wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson, for an anytime touchdown. You can get Marvin Harrison Jr. plus 155. You can get Michael Wilson plus 270. Size those right. You want to bet a little bit more on Marvin Harrison Jr., a little bit less on Michael Wilson. And the goals, if we hit one of these, we profit. If we hit 2, that's gravy. Luck overs are 46, 23, and 1. That's 66.5% since 2018. And after week 11, when we lower that luck over threshold from a plus 10 to a plus 5, still 61.5% to the over since 2018. And both of these wide receivers, they're showing value in our prop projections, which of course, powered by our analytics team, Sean Koerner. And both of these wide receivers perform better versus man coverage, a higher yards per route run, and 5 total touchdowns versus man versus 4 versus zone defense. And that's notable because, most teams play a lot more zone than they do man, but the New England Patriots play man coverage at a top 3 rate in the NFL.
Oh, I like this one. I like getting into some Arizona, New England. What's number 2?
Yeah, number 2, we're going to go to that ugly Cleveland, Kansas City game. Cleveland being the unlucky team. So let's go on the other side of the ball. Kareem Hunt under 6.5 rushing attempts. You can get that around minus 115. with Cleveland being the unlucky team, that means the luck rankings say they're more likely to cover, 62% over a 200 game sample size since 2018. If Cleveland does cover, right, they're only 4.5 point underdogs. They could very well be leading versus the Chiefs in the second half, which would force the Chiefs into a more pass heavy script. I know there's going to be weather here, but if the Chiefs are trailing or a neutral game, certainly they're not going to be double-digit point leads if the luck rankings are correct here. So less running. And with the reintroduction of Isaiah Pacheco back from injury, in that first game back, it was around a 50-50 split, but last week, Pacheco had 14 of the 20 running back carries, and Samaje Perine even got one, and I think that should continue. I mean, Pacheco has been so much more efficient than Kareem Hunt in both games since they've been together, and it's not even close, so I expect Pacheco to get the bulk of the carries again.
All right, last one on the board. We're finally talking about the ugliest game today. The New York Giants right now are 17-point home underdogs against the Baltimore Ravens. Nick, what's your play for this game?
Yeah, I'd be doing a disservice if we didn't bet on Tommy DeVito when he's playing. So how are we going to do that? We'll take the New York Giants second half team total over 6.5 points. You can get that at -120. You mentioned the Giants, the unlucky team, but in Tommy DeVito's 7 career starts, he's only piloted his team to 37 first half points, but in the second half, 83 second half points. Some of that might be garbage time, and that's okay. Some of it might be he's just getting into the game flow better, and he's a guy that needs to adapt to the game given his limited skill set and just time in the NFL. Baltimore, they also allow much higher second half points than first half points. They allow 14.5 in the second half compared to 10 in the first half. And so, if the Giants cover, they probably get there in the second half anyway. And if they don't cover, at least it's probably a spot where they're getting so far blown out that Tommy DeVito will be facing backups in the fourth quarter there. So I like this second half over here for the Giants.
Well, look, if you're looking for a way in and you're a little bit squeamish about playing the Giants in any capacity, I like your logic for playing Tommy DeVito in the second half of that game. Sunday night football. It's not the Lions and the Bills, but it's still a really good game. Green Bay traveling across the country, 2.5 point favorites against the Seattle Seahawks. True test here. We got the Packers coming from the best division in football, going against the Seahawks, who a lot of people are still skeptical about. The total is 46.5. Sean Koerner, fire away.
I'm going to try to stay hot with these touchdown bets. Hit the last 3 now, including that plus 650 Ray Davis one. So I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft to score a touchdown at plus 270. He's currently showing, the most value in our anytime touchdown projections right now. And he's been one of Jordan Love's top targets in the red zone this year. He caught his 7th touchdown last week in a tough matchup against the Lions. He actually should have had 2 touchdowns. There was a play, 2nd and goal on the 3-yard line. He was wide open, and Jordan Love, it looked like he got the yips or something, threw it 10 feet over his head. Should have had 2 scores. This is an easier matchup for tight ends here against the Seahawks. They're more middle of the pack. So I think he keeps it going here, and I'm projecting him closer to plus 200. So I think we're getting some pretty good value here at plus 270.
Yeah, you've been nailing these every single week. We're lighting up Slack when an anytime touchdown comes in on these Sunday night football games. Okay, Simon, what do you got?
Taking Green Bay in the second half spread, and this is just all about how this team performs the second half, right? Under LaFleur, they're one of the best second half teams in all of football, and against the spread, they're 22-10 the last 2 seasons in the second half spread. That's a big deal. Like, this is a team that knows how to make adjustments and attack teams in the second half, and it really is all about to do this Seahawks team. I just think being a little inflated. I think that after their bye week, they played a bad 49ers team. They won outright. Then they played an Arizona team. Great respect. They won that game outright. Then the Jets, and then the Arizona again. So they played 4 teams that have records below 500 right now, Chad. So it's a lot of respect to, I get it. Like, they had to win those games. Good on them to do it. But now they're going against a team that's viewed as one of the better teams in all of football. And, I have to give respect to this Green Bay team. they could have flawed into early in the season, right? The Jordan Love injury, they kind of built back around it, and they've been really tough this season to knock out. And it seems like the only team that can really beat them is in their own division, right? We've seen it outside their own division; they've been great. Inside their division, obviously they've struggled going 0-2 against the Lions. And this is a spot where if this was an extended rest, maybe I would step away from this. But this is a team that's had more than 11 days to prepare for this game. So I don't think it's going to be a sight. But fatigue, not worried about the travel here. I like Green Bay to bounce back. Give me Green Bay's money line for the second half.
Yeah, look, I like Green Bay a lot in this game. I bet on Green Bay at 2.5. Sorry, I'm foreshadowing a little bit for how Raybon and I are going to debate this. So, Raybon, why don't you dig in here?
Yeah, I like Seattle plus 2.5. And I think a lot of it is I love Green Bay too. I think they're a great team. I think both of these teams are right up there with the other top 3 teams in the NFC. But I just think Seattle is more underrated to the point where there's not much difference between these two teams, and Seattle's at home. So you look at Seattle and their defense has gotten a ton better. And you expected that because remember, McDonald is their head coach. We saw it with Baltimore last year. It took a while, but once it got good, it got good. And weeks 1 through 8, they were 26th in rush EPA, 17th against the pass. Now the last, since week 9, they are top 5 in both metrics. And it's not just like, oh, they're playing better. Like they've made schematic changes and personnel changes. So they got Ernest Jones, the linebacker, in week 8. That's when their run defense started taking off, and they inserted rookie Tyrese Knight in week 11. So that's been helping their run defense. And what that's allowed them to do is defend the run with 7. Because they can defend the run with 7, they can leave their safeties, who are both top 15 rated at PFF, Love and Kobe Bryant. They can leave them back in coverage more to help out their corners. That's what you want to do against Jordan Love, because he loves to take shots downfield, but he's turnover prone. And I think he's getting a little lucky lately because they've been able to attempt just 22 passes per game in their last 4 games. And Jordan Love has a 3.4% turnover worthy throw rate. Geno Smith just 2.1%. But remember, Geno, he started the year throwing. He was leading the league in attempts for the first half of the season. And now it's started to come down because they can run the ball more. Their defense is playing better. So I think there's some turnover regression here coming for Green Bay. And then the Seattle offense, I think it's underrated too, because, they got their right tackle Cornelius Lucas back a couple weeks ago. They put the rookie in at right guard, and they've also switched to a gap scheme running the football because it just better suits those guys, who can kind of get out there. And Green Bay gives up twice the amount of rush EPA against those kind of runs. And Charbonnet's just been a better back this year than Kenneth Walker. I know Koerner loves Charbonnet. He's probably really happy to see him bust out for 124 yards last week. But I'll just say this, Seattle's run game, everyone kind of, they can't get the run game going. It's always a talking point beginning of every broadcast. Zach Charbonnet this year, 3.6 yards after contact per attempt. That's 4th in the National Football League. Kenneth Walker, 3.7 yards per carry total. So Charbonnet is getting 0.1 per carry less than Walker is getting total. He's adding the efficiency to their run game. And the Seattle team, they have 5 losses. Green Bay has 4. Green Bay's losses are all very good losses. Detroit, Minnesota, that's it. But 2 of Seattle's losses are really fluky as well. The Giant game, they were kicking a game-winning field goal and got it returned for a touchdown. 9. They end up losing by 9, but that was, they should have won that game by 1. And then they had this Rams game, and I remember because I was on the Seahawks, and it was just a miserable afternoon. The Seahawks, the Rams scored more from their own goal line with the Seahawks on offense than the Seahawks did. Like, there was just bouncing ball, 100-yard pick sixes, ridiculousness. So I think both of these teams are just very, very good. I wouldn't be surprised to see, them knock off, some of the top NFC teams and ended up making it to the championship. But you're getting 2.5 points here. Seattle at home. And I know people will ask about the 3 and the 2.5. If you look in our BetLabs database, the most profitable number to bet on an underdog is plus 2.5. So give me the Seahawks plus 2.5.
Wow. Did not know that. That's fascinating. I'm going to want to dig in more on that. I mean, look, I like the Packers, so great argument. But I'm going with the Packers in the game, but I'm going with Tucker Kraft anytime touchdown, because who wants to fade Koerner right now? on the anytime touchdowns. That addition to the projections for touchdowns has been glorious this year, all season long. I'd be a fool not to back it. Look, if you want to play Koerner's anytime touchdown, if you want to play the Packers in the second half, you want to play the Seahawks for the full game, you can get it now plus 1,600. I think that's the price at DraftKings right now. By the way, breaking news, David Njoku inactive for the game today. Does not bode well for us Browns 4.5 backers, but we'll keep our faith because it's still a big luck rankings game. This has been Convince Me. Good luck to everybody today. Stay tuned for the touchdown show.
Thank you, Chad, and welcome to the Touchdown Show for Week 15. I'm Gilles Gallant with the Action Network, joined as always with Brian Matthews, a.k.a. the B-Mat. And each week we cover the anytime touchdown market in the NFL. We're going to have best bets for the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. We're going to have a touchdown parlay. We're going to have also a same-game parlay for touchdowns for Packers Seahawks for Sunday Night Football. Now, B-Mat, I sad to report we don't have a guest today, but what it's going to allow us to do, we're going to do a special collab touchdown bet on a wide receiver that has been a staple of the show. We're going to ladder him today. I can't wait to unveil that. That's going to be closer to the middle of. But B-Man, I want to get right into it now. Let's kick off the show. So let's start with our best anytime touchdown bets. If this is your first time watching, here's how it works. We start off with the lowest odds, and then we work our way up. Finish off with some spicy touchdown bets. Those are usually the 2 touchdown bets, first touchdown bets, anything with some spice to it. So let's kick us off today. Let's go right to the Dallas Cowboys versus the Carolina Panthers, where the Carolina Panthers, B-Matt, are favorites for the first time in about 2 years against my Cowboys, which kind of stinks. But I do like the Panthers offense and the way that they are being a little more resurgent as the season has gone on. So I'm going to take Adam Thielen to score an anytime touchdown against this Cowboys secondary. So I grabbed it at plus 230. He's got 25 targets and a touchdown in 3 games since coming back from injury. 4 of those targets, B-Matt, in the red zone, at least 1 red zone target in each of those games. And say what you will about Bryce Young, but Adam Thielen has become Bryce Young's favorite target over the last 2 games. He's got 10 plus targets in both of those contests. In those games, he had a 26% target share, 30% first read share. And he also lines up in the slot nearly 75% of the time. And if you've watched the Cowboys, Jordan Lewis is probably going to be the one who matches up with him. He's been doing well in coverage, but he's not infallible. And I find this Cowboys secondary to be a little overrated. So, and they've allowed the 6th most catches to wide receiver or slot wide receivers over the last 5 games. So I think Adam Thielen, his stock is going up. He didn't score last week, but he's definitely got the volume. He looked great against both like the Chiefs, the Bucks, and the Eagles. So I like Adam Thielen to score an anytime touchdown this week against this Cowboys secondary. B-Matt, before we go into your best bet, what do you think of this Panthers team and maybe banking on touchdown scores in this offense?
Well, look, I like Adam Thielen, and I think you say, hey, say what you want about Bryce Young, but I think, yeah, if you'd have told me 5 weeks ago, we'd be sitting here saying, hey, Bryce Young's been dealing lately. I'd say you're crazy, but he's been dealing lately. So, you know, he's actually been very good in the last couple games. And, you know, I think you look at the Dallas defense, no Trayvon Diggs, no Overshawn. Obviously, you still have Parsons. But, yeah, I just think this is a matchup that plays into his hands. And I think we see Thielen score a touchdown today.
Well, I think it's funny, too, that we remember earlier in the year, the rule was like, oh, Bryce Young starting, like, I'm not touching any Panthers.
Exactly.
Whereas it's Andy Dalton is starting. It's like, oh, man, all systems go for Panthers wide receivers. So what a way the season changes as we go on. So Adam Thielen, anytime touchdown at plus 230 is my best bet for Week 15. B-Matt, what is your best bet for Week 15?
Yeah, so I'm going to go Josh Allen anytime touchdown at plus 120. And look, as we know historically, when the playoffs start to inch closer, Josh Allen starts to run a lot more. We saw he scored 3 touchdowns last week. This game is being played indoors. And I think my favorite part about this is the Lions run a lot of man coverage. And when your corners are in man coverage, a lot of times your back is to the quarterback, and Josh Allen is dangerous when he does that. So, look, I'm expecting Josh Allen to run a bit today. I like the over on his rushing prop. I also happen to like his anytime touchdown prop. So that's going to be my first pick for the day.
Well, I think what's interesting, too, about Josh Allen is not just the indoor factor, but his scramble rate picks up when they're trailing. And right now, like I still think the Bills can win this game, but they are underdogs on the road in Detroit, right? So there is a likelihood, especially with Detroit starting fast, that the Bills could be trailing, similar to what we saw last week against the Rams. And then obviously he ran for 3 touchdowns. So Josh Allen, plus 120. Love that bet. Would even be interested if you wanted to ladder it as well to 2 touchdowns around 10-1, I think is a fair price for Josh Allen. Okay, so if you want access to all of Action Pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Koerner, other members of the Action Analytics team. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, money line, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code POWER20 at sign up. One more time, that's POWER20 at sign up for $20 off. All right, B-Matt, let's look at Sunday Night Football. Packers, Seahawks. We got a total of 46. It's in Seattle as well. Not too much weather, but it is going to be a little dewy, I believe. So right now at the top, you've got Josh Jacobs coming off a 3-touchdown game, 2 3-touchdown games rather in his last 3. So he's at minus 160. And then right at the top of the list, I know Kenneth Walker is on the list. He is actually doubtful. So Zach Charbonnet, that's why he has similar odds to Kenneth Walker. So we can just exclude Kenneth Walker here. But Zach Charbonnet at minus 120 is going to be his anytime touchdown odds against the Packers. Then you've got DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba around plus 175 to plus 185. And you start to see the Packers like Christian Watson, Jaden Reed up to plus 240 BMAT. And then Romeo Doubs plus 270. He's off concussion protocol. Tucker Kraft and Tyler Lockett rounding out this top 10. BMAT, when I start to look at this list right away, I mean, my eyes immediately go to Zach Charbonnet. I don't want to bet him as a single, but I do think that it would be a good idea to maybe have him as one of the legs for a same game parlay, especially because in 3 games this year without Kenneth Walker, he has looked amazing. He has 5 touchdowns. He coming off a 2-touchdown game against the Cardinals last week, 2 touchdowns against the Dolphins earlier in the year when Kenneth Walker was ruled out. So I think around minus 120, minus 130, I think that's a solid first leg for the same game parlay. Who do you think we should add with that?
Yeah, so when I look at this game, like the first name that jumps out to me is Tucker Kraft, and let me explain why. So over the last 3 games, he's seen 5 red zone targets. He has 7 touchdowns in his last 10 games. And this is kind of where the matchup is a little trickier. You look and you say, okay, like none of these receivers jump out to me. And then you look at and you say, oh my gosh, Tucker Kraft has been the guy, you know, when the field shrinks. And that's what you're looking for. So I just think even though Seattle actually gives up the 10th most receiving yards to tight ends, they haven't given up many touchdowns. But I'm not looking too far into that. I just think with a quarterback like Jordan Love, you know, you try to find a guy that he trusts a lot. And if you go back and look at the red zone targets throughout the course of the year and just the touchdown production, you know, you say, man, Tucker Kraft jumps off the page. So what do you think about Tucker Kraft?
I think Tucker Kraft is a solid second leg. And I think the reason why I prefer Tucker Kraft over somebody like Jaden Reed, who did stand out to me like at plus 240 when you're getting Jaden Reed, it's very interesting. However, doesn't do well against man coverage. Seattle's playing a lot of man, especially on the outside. And the other thing too, with Romeo Doubs coming back, Jaden Reed ends up kind of getting off to the side unless they're playing 3 receiver sets. If they're playing 2 wide receiver sets or 12 personnel, Jaden Reed isn't really on the field very much. So I think Tucker Kraft is the guy that we should do. So why don't we add Tucker Kraft with Zach Charbonnet? And when you put those together, that parlay comes out to 465 at DraftKings. So I think let's just put a half unit on that. I think Tucker Kraft, Zach Charbonnet, I think that's a solid look for touchdown scores on each side. So that's our same game parlay for Sunday Night Football. Let's now move to our medium bets. So these are ones that are a little bit higher than plus 200, but not quite that spicy range that we're looking for. And you like a touchdown score that has been featured on this show, I want to say at least 3 of the last 4 shows. So who are you like this week?
Look, I'm grabbing the baton. It's Jameson Williams week. So I'm going to go Jameson Williams anytime touchdown at plus 240. And I went through the slate and tried everything to find somebody that I liked a little bit better because I didn't want to have 2 touchdown scores in the same game. But here we are. So look, Jameson Williams, I think this is kind of an interesting one too, because the last 2 weeks, the Bills defense has run a lot more single high safety looks. Prior to that, it was a ton of cover 2. And so the way that I look at it though, if it's cover 1, or if they're running the single high, then you've got a 20% first read share for Jameson Williams. He's still seeing the ball. I think he can get his shots there. If they run a little more cover 2 and try to prevent the deep tack, then it jumps up to 25, 26%. So I think either way, it's a solid matchup. And it's Jameson Williams. The game is being played indoors. The guy is a home run threat. So I think this is a game where, he's been very involved, not as much touchdown equity as of late, but I think he's scoring this week. So I'm going to go Jameson Williams with the medium bet.
It's also the Bills, their secondary. They're a little banged up.
Yeah, banged up.
Douglas
Absolutely
isn't going to play. One of their safeties didn't practice a lot this week, but he's banged up. Again, just a lot of injuries came out of that game last week against the Rams in the secondary for the Bills, which should lead more options for Jameson Williams. I remember last week as well, you were on Tim Patrick. I think you cashed on him for an anytime touchdown and 2 touchdowns. So Jamo rather, I think is a solid look here. The other angle, of course, that if you're looking for another Lions touchdown score, you can't go wrong with Sam Laporta first half touchdown if for anybody who likes to bet on Sammy ball game. So Jameson Williams is who BMAT is on for his second best bet. My second best bet is a guy that I actually bet last week. He was actually my first best bet, and he cashed against the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going back to him this week, and that's Devontae Smith. I'm taking Devontae Smith to score a touchdown on this Steelers secondary. BMAT, Devontae, when we bet him last week, he had 4 touchdowns on the season. Now he has 5. He caught one last week. And the big angle of why we like Devontae is how he does in games without Dallas Goedert. Without Dallas Goedert, he becomes a primary receiving option for the Eagles. He's scored in 3 or 4 games this season without Dallas Goedert, 5 of the last 7 since the start of last season. And I don't want to say this is a troll or a pivot, but pretty much anybody who is betting on touchdown scores this week is going to tell you about why A.J. Brown is going to score a touchdown this week.
Yep.
And I'm just not as convinced that A.J. Brown has a quality matchup. Of course, he can destroy man coverage. Of course, he is a matchup threat against any cornerback. But Joey Porter Jr. with the Steelers is pretty good. And I imagine he's going to probably employ some shadow coverage on A.J. Brown, which should allow more receiving opportunities for Devontae Smith. So that is who I like to score a touchdown against the Steelers secondary. B-Matt, what do you think of this game of the Battle of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia? And do you think the Eagles passing game will get back on track this week?
I don't think they're going to get back on track. I think they're going to force the ball to A.J. Brown. So if A.J. Brown has, a good amount of yards, then, they'll hope that everything is well on that front. But yeah, I like this pick. I mean, we talked about this last week. It's like you really look with Dallas Goedert out. It's Grant Calcaterra, and given he scored, but he's not the receiving threat that Goddard was. So you look to, okay, where does the slot, and quick passing game go to? And it does really funnel to Devontae Smith by means of Dallas Goedert being out. So I like that one a lot.
All right, so Devontae Smith at plus 240 is what I bet it at. So I think this is a solid look here in this game for the 4 p.m. slate, in a game where I expect it to actually be a little bit more of a defensive battle, and very excited to see how that game unfolds. Even though the 4 p.m. slate is amazing today, I think that game is great. Yeah. But even that game can't even top Bills Lions, like with what we have available to us to bet on for touchdown scores. Speaking of the 4 p.m. slate, though, BMAT, this is the time. We got to unveil our collab bet this week. And the 4 p.m. slate has one of our favorite players to ever bet for touchdown scores, and it's involving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they're playing the Chargers. Mike Evans. We got to do it. We're going to do it. So this is the thing. Mike Evans for an anytime touchdown. We tracked it on the Action Network app on Thursday. We bet him at plus 160 for a touchdown, and we bet him for 2 touchdowns at 11-1. BMAT. Let's gush about Mike Evans for a minute, because this to me is the most matchup-proof wide receiver in the NFL, more so than Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. And the way that they price him is they don't price him that way. They price him more like he is, one of the elder statesmen, of wide receivers. But when you look at his receiving metrics, he looks just as good as ever. Like, he's excelling versus zone defense. He excels versus man defense. And against zone, he has 3 touchdowns, leads the Buccaneers with 3 touchdowns against zone defense. And the Chargers, they play zone at a top 5 rate, and they've been giving up some touchdowns to wide receivers over the last few weeks. They gave up one to DeAndre Hopkins last week as well. So I like as well that we're getting Mike Evans off a week that he didn't score. So I think he's going to have to be more involved this week if the Chargers stay competitive compared to the Raiders last week, where he didn't even have to play in the fourth quarter. So, B-Matt, this is your time to just tell us, what do you think about Mike Evans' touchdowns this week against the Chargers?
Yeah, there are like 5 players in the NFL where if I bet their anytime touchdown and it doesn't hit, I go, you know what? I'm okay with that. I can live with that any day of the week. Mike Evans is one of those guys. So yeah, this kind of a no-brainer. And also, you try to find like little angles of like, all right, what might he be, playing for? He's got to keep, if he wants to keep his streak of, consecutive 1,000-yard seasons going, I think he's got to average like 102 receiving yards a game. Now, the reason I say that obviously isn't, we're not talking about touchdowns there, but when you're fed a lot of volume, touchdowns tend to follow. So I'm not sure that they're going to try to get him that, but it's pretty impressive. I think he's got 10 consecutive years with 1,000+ yards to start his career, and I think he's one away from Jerry Rice's record. So, I think it's something to look at, see, like, maybe they do funnel more targets to Mike Evans, and it's also Mike Evans. So if they get near the goal line, big body guy, they're going to throw it up to him. So, yeah, love Mike Evans any week, every week.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad that you brought up the point about when you bet Mike Evans, you live with it if he doesn't score or somebody else scores, because that's always been the rule with me with Mike Evans and maybe like Chris Godwin or Cade Otton or, in this case, Sterling Shepard or Jalen McMillan. If you try to go bet on one of those other guys and you don't bet Mike Evans and then Mike Evans scores, you will want to put your head in the blender. Like you just will want to walk into traffic. You will not feel good about yourself. Whereas if you bet Mike Evans and then one of those other guys scores, you're like, well, you live with that. That's the way it goes. But he is clearly Baker Mayfield's favorite target, the best wide receiver that Baker Mayfield has ever played with. So let's ladder him. Touchdowns today. Mike Evans for an anytime touchdown and Mike Evans for 2 touchdowns. That's what's going down against that Chargers defense. So, B-Matt, let's get into our spicy touchdown bets now. This is where we look for the more longer shots, like something like 8-1, 10-1, 12-1, whatever.
Yeah.
But anything like over 5-1 is kind of the range of what we're looking at. So, B-Matt, 2 touchdown bets coming from you. What do you like for your spicy touchdown bets for Week 15?
All right, so this one originally was well above 10-1, and then Action Network's very own Sean Koerner decided that he loved this pick too. He obviously did not know that I was on it, and then the odds went and they were cut in half. Look, it's still, so I'm going to go Keaton Mitchell, anytime touchdown. It's plus 800. I played this on Wednesday, and it was 16-1. Sean,
you got that last touchdown in.
Yeah, and I told you about when we were on our call. I said, hey, man, I'm thinking, Keaton Mitchell last touchdown score too. And I saw he put that in. I go, oh, boy, these odds aren't going to last.
Steam City.
So, yeah. So anyway, let me just get into this. It's 16.5-point favorites. The Ravens are today against the Giants, led by Tommy DeVito. All right. And look, this is just a matchup. I'm expecting the Ravens to absolutely steamroll the Giants. And I think if you're in the Ravens coaching staff, and you've got an opportunity to potentially give Derrick Henry a half of football off, you do it at this point in the season. You try to keep those legs fresh, knowing that you are a playoff team, and there's no point to give him, an enormous workload today against the Giants if the game plays out as expected. So I think I think Keaton Mitchell, if we remembered him at all from last year prior to injury, the guy was dynamic. I mean, absolutely explosive. So I think this is just a matchup. Again, Giants have a terrible run defense. I don't think they're going to be able to do much on offense. And I just think this is going to be a spot where the Ravens are going to try to run the ball out, run the clock out basically in the second half. And I think they do that with Keaton Mitchell. So that's going to be the first pick.
Yeah. So Keaton Mitchell, I think is somebody that's very sneaky today as well. And 8-1, love those odds. What is your second spicy pick?
Yeah. So this was going to be potentially my mild pick for one, but I'm going to go Isaiah Pacheco 2+ touchdowns plus 900. And look, the weather in Cleveland is supposed to be awful today. So that's just something to add to what already plays into this matchup. So if you just look at this, I normally don't pick touchdown scores for the Browns, and I didn't in this case. I'm just picking somebody to score against the Browns, which this year has kind of been a safe bet. So, look, the Browns' run defense has been terrible. Isaiah Pacheco looked like they were starting to ramp up his carries and snaps last week, 14 carries last week. I mean, Browns ranked 29th in rushing touchdowns allowed. It's supposed to just be rain all over the place. And then if you go back and look at the last 5 games, it's like the Browns are just the turnstile. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns. Or pardon me, 8 rushing touchdowns in the last 5 games. And that's, to me, it's like, all right, go ahead and go through, no big deal. So I just think Isaiah Pacheco in a game where the weather's not going to be very good, I think that he can absolutely just feast in this matchup.
The one thing too with Pacheco is more of a fade of Patrick Mahomes, I think. And the reason why I bring that up is because the Browns defensive line and Jim Schwartz's defense right now, second in pressure rate per drop back. And when you go look at Patrick Mahomes' metrics and how he does against pressure this year, it's not been good. It's like a 45% completion rate. So I think he's going to have difficulty throwing the ball, especially with the poor weather. So they're probably going to have to lean on that run game even more. And Pacheco, I mean, he just looked like Tasmanian devil last week against that Chargers defense for 14 carries. He looked amazing, and he always does. But the threat of Kareem Hunt, I don't think that's a threat anymore. Like he's had 6 total carries in the last 2 games. Like this is Pacheco's backfield, and I think he could definitely get 2 touchdowns on this Browns defense. Again, no offense, I'm not trying to trash the Browns, but when you go back and look at those last 5 games, that's how we cashed that Taysom Hill 2 touchdown bet. J.K. Dobbins had 2 touchdowns on them. They've given up a lot of touchdowns to running backs and running over the last few games. So I think it's a good trend to go with, especially with the way that Chiefs offense operates these days, where they're way less pass heavy anyway. So those are BMAT's 2 spicy bets. He's going to take Isaiah Pacheco for 2 touchdowns and Keaton Mitchell for an anytime touchdown with the Ravens. All right, BMAT, I've got 2 spicy touchdown bets. And I've got one for the 1 p.m. slate and one for the 4 p.m. slate. I think these are both solid matchups. So these 2 guys, we're going to go with Anthony Richardson for 2 touchdowns at 16-1 and T. Higgins for 2 touchdowns at 15-1. So let's start with Richardson, who tends to go with what he knows. And what we know about Tony Rich is he can barely complete a pass, BMAT, but he can run like hell. And he's got 29 carries over the last 3 games. That's more than Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen in the same stretch. 7 red zone carries inside the 5-yard line. 4 of those red zone carries inside the 5 have come in just the last 3 games. So definitely more of an effort that you could see that when they get within the 10-yard line, Jonathan Taylor gets that first carry, doesn't punch it in. Anthony Richardson finishes and seals the deal. And even like Kenny, he was on your guy, Kenny McAndrews with the moonshot. He was on our show a few weeks ago. He had Anthony Richardson for a touchdown and 2 touchdowns against that Jets defense. So I think the upside is just too good to ignore, especially if it's even though it's a tougher matchup on the road with that Broncos defense. But for what it's worth, both of his 2 touchdown games in his career were in road games. So I really like Anthony Richardson to finish the job, seal the deal, get 2 touchdowns against this Broncos defense. Now let's talk about T. Higgins, because part of this is a bet on Higgins, but the other is just really banking on this Bengals passing game, BMAT, because Joe Burrow might be the most locked in I've ever seen him as an NFL quarterback. 16 passing touchdowns just over the last 5 games. And the Bengals defense, they're not really doing them any favors. So they've been so bad that they have to continue to score to maintain pace. And coming into last week, T. Higgins, he was riding a 3-game touchdown streak, but then didn't get his touchdown as a Simpsons character. So he ended up getting a little bit boost in odds for us this week. But the other thing too, BMAT, is just over the last 3 games, he's second in the NFL in total red zone targets with 8. The only guy who has more is Jamar Chase with 10. So, and we've cashed a 2 touchdown bet on him before. BMAT, and you're going to love this one. There's a lot of coach speak this week, obviously, because Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals, and he just gushed about Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow for a good 10-minute segment, but he didn't really mention T. Higgins that much. So for me, I think what's going to happen is I think Callahan is going to try to steer his defense to try to double on Jamar Chase as much as possible, which is obviously easier said than done. But that should give Higgins more one-on-one looks against this Titans secondary that's just kind of regressing as the weeks have gone on. So T. Higgins for 2 touchdowns at 16-1, or pardon me, 15-1, and Anthony Richardson is at 16-1. B-Matt, before we talk about our final parlay here, what do you think of Tony Rich and T. Higgins in these matchups? Is there one that you probably prefer more than the other?
Hey, honestly, I like them both. I think T. Higgins is I mean, they're both going to be in good spots, but I think, anytime you see like T. Higgins had 30 receiving yards and Jamar Chase had, a couple hundred and a couple touchdowns, he might get a little bit of volume this week, so it's always something to look at. But no, I love both of these. I have both of them as pieces and parlays that I've played already, so I'm on board.
All right. So T. Higgins for 2 touchdowns, Anthony Richardson for 2 touchdowns are my spicy touchdown bets of week 15. B-Matt, before we get out of here, let's do another parlay. And I don't want to step on your Keaton Mitchell pick because again, part of it is this is an odds play, but one guy that I really wanted to add or do for the 180 challenge this week was Justice Hill. And it wasn't
I actually
because
love it. Yeah.
It's not because of Keaton Mitchell, or it's because you laid it out already about the Ravens being huge favorites, 16-point favorites. Like, they're going to probably steamroll the Giants today. And Justice Hill is the primary receiving back for the Ravens. He's been getting tons of volume receiving, and Derrick Henry doesn't really do that. And again, I just think Justice Hill is a solid spot. Plus, the other thing too is our Action Pro projections right now for week 15. Sean Koerner's Action Pro projections has Justice Hill as the biggest edge for an anytime touchdown this week at 5-1. So I think that we should try to either get Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell. That way we're going to take care of both of the backup running backs in this spot. So that is who I'm going to submit as the first leg of the 180 challenge. But because we have it at 5-1, B-Matt, you don't really have to do too much heavy lifting here to pick another guy to get this over 18-1. So who should we pair him with?
I'm going to push the chips all in on Jameson Williams here. I think that's just about the right odds range. Indoor, a game with a 50+ total, like, we're getting J-Mo touchdown today.
I love this. All right. So when you pair these together, because normally I like to do 3 legs, this time we're just going to do a nice 2-leg parlay, and it's going to be Justice Hill paired with Jameson Williams. When you parlay those at Bet365, the odds come up to around 19-1, just under 20-1. So that's what we're going to do today. Justice Hill for an anytime touchdown. We're going to pair that with J-Mo at plus 240. So that comes out to around 19-1. So B-Matt, that's all for today. 4 picks for me, 4 picks for you. We've got some touchdown parlays on deck. We've got a collab on Mike Evans for a touchdown letter. I feel like we've got our bases covered right now, especially for a slate that has no buys this week. So I just want to remind everybody the Touchdown Show will be back here for week 16 on Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, live right after Convince Me during the Action Network Power Hour. And if you missed the show, you want to get our picks, download the Action app. All of our touchdown bets are tracked there. You can get them as soon as we bet them with pick notifications. So I want to thank you again for joining us for the Touchdown Show for week 15. Bon chance.